Where's my trucker hat? Sombrero boy, where's my trucker hat? Yeah, I'm talking to you there too, big buff and stupid. God, I really cannot believe I'm doing this right now. What is up, YouTube people? Eric here with Team Badman, and you guys know what time it is. It is Friday afternoon, and we are 2 weeks out from the release of Vengeance. So that means we have got some spoilers that we need to take a look at today. So as a recap over the past couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago when we started getting Vengeance MP spoilers, Broly was the first one to come out, and we got extremely hype over his physical modifying abilities, his massive stage drain power, and his ability to banish cards from the life deck, which made him a lot more balanced of an MP than was expected. Very versatile, very effective, and I can see him showing up in a lot of decks, as we mentioned in the video overviewing him, which I'll include a link to down below just in case you haven't seen it. Then last week we had the hero MPs who were revealed, and we took a look at how they may change up their respective stats. Some are great, some are not so great. But along with that, we also had the reveal of Surprise Attack and Instant Transmission, the Dragon Rare and one of the Ultra Rares in the set. And those are most definitely the high points for the video. There's a lot of good stuff that the cards can do, and arguably they overshadowed the MPs in almost every way. So if you guys haven't seen that video as well, I'll include a link to that down below so that you guys can see that one too. But we are now in week 3, and as I'm sure you guys can see right here, I just so happen to be wearing a hat. It may not be a trucker hat, but believe me, it's a hat nonetheless. Yee-HAW! Okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry. Anyway, the reason I am wearing this hat is because this week's MP reveal is Android 13, which is one that arguably here, I've been unbelievably excited to see. I'm a huge fan of Android 13. It's arguably my favorite movie, Super Android 13 is. And I had really high hopes for his reveal because I've been taking a look at a lot of the Android cards as of late. So we've gotten some absolutely great choices here. You know, we've got all the Android allies, which are great. Android presence isn't too bad as long as you've got the cards to actually work with as a means to level. Android Headbutt is a great attack. Android Defensive Burst is a phenomenal energy attack. Defensive Burst, Defensive Blast, Defensive Burlast, it's one of those, I don't remember which. But anyway, Androids have some excellent cards that are working for them, some really aggressive, really fun anchor choices. And my concern was that we were never really going to get an MP who would be able to utilize the full potential of the Android style. And there was this idea in my mind, which I'm going to address in a later video, that androids could have their own archetype at some point. There could be android dedicated decks in the same way as there are ally decks and Dragon Ball decks and you know, all the other plethoras of decks that there are out there. They can be very geared towards using the effects of androids the best that they possibly can. The closest I think we had was Android 18, who could actually utilize some of the other Android cards, you know, pull them out of the deck, actually get some benefit out of them. But I think we finally found a dedicated Android card-based MP here with Android 13. So that's what we're going to look at here in this video. We're going to look at the Android 13 MP stack levels 1 through 4. We're going to look at his named cards, Android 13's Impenetrable Defense and Android 13's SS Deadly Bomber. The two allies that were revealed with Android 13, Android 14 and Android 15 namely. And we've also got the final ultra rare for the set to take a look at, which was revealed earlier this week. So we're also going to take a look at Unleashed as a little bit of a bonus so that we can cover all of the bases that we possibly can. So we start off the stack with Android 13's level 1, which has hands down my absolute favorite descriptor for any MP level in the game, and that is Redneck Robot. You read that right, you're seeing that right on the screen. Redneck Robot. And oh boy, did they manage to fit his character really well. And that was the moment that Panini realized they did something right. Yee-HAW. Seriously though, Android 13's level 1 is a pretty respectable start to his entire MP stack. And it highlights a characteristic of his entire MP stack in the regard that he's got both a continuous or an immediate effect. In this case, continuous for level 1, but some levels have an immediate effect. And he has a physical attack, which applies across all 4 levels of his MP stack, which may make him actually the only MP stack, now that I think about it, to have an attack across all 4 MP levels, which is very, very powerful. It means that he's not necessarily going to lose an action or really lose a step if he levels, which works out really well because 13 is actually a very viable looking MPPV kind of stack. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. His level 1's continuous effect is whenever you play a card with Android in the title, raise your anger 1 level. This works out great because a lot of current Android cards just so happen to have anger in them already. Android Headbutt allows you to raise or lower a player's anger 1 level. Android Defensive Blast lets you raise your anger 1. There's likely to be some other Android cards out there that can be able to help you manipulate your anger, especially ones that are considered named for your card effects. So, you know, it'd become Android 13's such and such, whatever it is. Android 13's Overwhelming Power. There's a perfect example. So anytime you play a card with Android in the title, you get to raise your anger 1 level. This helps Android 13 just really get off his level 1 fast, which you want to get to some of the higher levels as we're going to discuss later. So he's got some really nice effects. But level 1 is a solid starting point, especially for establishing a really solid base for your entire game. So Android 13's physical attack deals 4 stages of damage, which isn't super great, but it's a decent enough foundation. It's flat damage, and it's really easily modifiable as a physical attack. You can modify it with Orange Depth Mastery and the Orange Physical Drills. Black Devious Mastery could update it. Some of the Ruthless Drills could do it. And also later, Android 14 can do it, which of course we're going to get to later on in the video, but he's got some really cool effects as well. But the hit effect, which speaking of Android 14, the hit effect allows you to pull an ally with Android in the title from your life deck and play it. So not only does that have immediate synergy with Android 13's own power, so you actually do gain an anger for playing it, but you get the advantage of getting extra ally out. You can apply some effects. It works out really well if you're going for kind of an ally-based approach. If you're going for a blue-based ally deck utilizing Lunar Ray and Overpowering Attack and Clash and all these things, it's really easy to help establish yourself. The downside is you have to hit in order to get your ally out, which that's one thing that Captain Ginyu does not have, and that he probably should have had from the get-go, is hit access in order to pull out the ally. So that works out nicely for Android 13. There's a lot of easy ways for him to gain anger. His power level's okay. I wish the attack did a little bit more damage, in all honesty. 4 stages isn't super strong, especially in this game when you've got guys like Krillin who are throwing energy attacks for 4 life easily. An AT modifier on this would have been nice, and even could have toned down the damage. It could have been, I don't know, AT plus 1 like Android 17's got. Something that gives you a little bit more oomph there. Flat stage damage, it does work out relatively nicely, especially if Android 18 ever sees some pickup. But all in all, it's not too bad a start. Level 1's pretty good. It works with the ally kind of idea, and there's a ton of great Android allies to pull out. So it all works out really well, and it's a pretty foundational start. I don't really see too many complaints here. Android 13's level 2 continues to crank up the pressure by adding an excellent when entering combat effect and a really, really nice hit effect off his physical attack. Of course, it's going to come with some drawbacks, which are going to be relatively noted. But all in all, level 2 is a really nice level to work with. His when entering effect says you may banish an Android 14 or Android 15 ally that you either control or have in your discard pile to advance your MP1 level just straight outright. No gaining anger, you just jump up a level. Of course, this comes as a trade-off of MPPV, but it's a really, really fast way to get up to the higher levels, which is where you want to be, especially level 3, which has an amazing when entering effect that I will get to when we address his level specifically. The ability to level hop, as we know, is very, very powerful. It may not have the anger thing, and there may be a lot of cards right now that really hate on the idea of advancing an MP an entire level, but it's still a really nice tool, especially if you're able to prevent those cards like Android Armbreaker or whatever from getting out into play early enough. He's once again got a physical attack like I mentioned. Your opponent skips their next action in this combat just straight outright with the effect, so it's a little bit disruptive, it's a lot of fun. For the Trunks players, or for the same players who've used cards like Gut Kick or Sword Skill, you know how effective those are. So it's really, really nice. The damage is only 3 stages though, which is hardly great. This is another one where I would have loved to see a buff up, a little bit more damage. 5 stages probably would have been okay. 6 stages would have been great. You know, Android Armbreaker's got 6 stages, Dig goes for 6 stages, Nappa's Energized Charge goes for 6 stages. And those are all just really, really powerful. So, would have loved to see a little bit more girth out of this attack. The hit effect is where you're really gonna benefit from. The hit effect allows you to search your banish zone for any card with Android in the title and rejuvenate it, which is really, really effective. It actually ties in with Android 13's own power, just in case you get de-leveled after you utilize the effect to banish one of your own allies. It's really easy to get back cards like Android Defensive Blast with this. Android Armbreaker would end up being a good target. It's actually a good enough reason to run some of the cards that may actually banish cards from your own discard pile, just so that you can recur them back in an easier way than utilizing rejuvenation-specific cards. Which that's a reason that this hit effect is also really, really useful. Is that it gives discard power recursion to the styles that, as I mentioned a lot, don't really have good discard power recursion. Black benefits from it really hard. Red benefits from it. Even decks like Orange Adaptive really benefit from it. So that's super useful there. My only complaint on this one is I wish there had really just been a little bit more girth to that attack, like I said. But you can make it work with some of the other modifying drills or modifying effects. So, all in all, it's not bad. The when entering effect is arguably the best part of this level. It's going to help catapult you to what is a phenomenal Android 13 level 3. So Android 13's level 3 has arguably the best when entering effect of any of his MP levels. So as an immediate effect when entering combat, your opponent's MP loses 4 stages flat, which helps facilitate a little bit of a stage lock kind of approach. And at the same time, it's not to a minimum of 0, so you can just mill your opponent when you're entering combat because why not? Good stuff. On top of that, your opponent just skips their next action when entering combat, so it's a free Piccolo's weighted clothing. That's just, he's got that outright, and even the secondary effect of Piccolo's weighted clothing does appear later when we address Android 13's impenetrable defense. So that's just a really, really powerful when entering effect. It's like, you thought Broly had good ones, there are some other ones in here as well, and Android 13 is really, really fitting into that. Oh, excuse me there. So once again, Android 13 has a physical attack. This one I actually really, really like. It's for 7 stages, which is a really, really solid flat stage damage attack. It's, on par with Orange Side Swipe, except this one can be modified. Flat stage damage is great, especially if you've got like Android 20 or I'll Dig Your Grave in play to where it's unpreventable. It can be really, really powerful, deal a very considerable amount of damage, and modifiers just make it better. But the hit effect is the primary reason that you want to use his level 3. The hit effect says your opponent's continuous powers cannot be used this turn, which is, oh my god, that's just so insanely powerful. Shutting off drills, shutting off allies, shutting off MP powers. There's a lot that you can just completely disrupt with a physical attack this outrageously powerful. It's just all kinds of insane. And it's so easy to get to there too. Level 1 levels so fast, level 2 jumps you right away. I can see this being the point where a lot of Android decks are gonna want to sit, especially ones that can get modifiers like Orange Adept and Black Devious. This will be the hot spot for Android 13, and I can very, very clearly see why. It's really powerful, arguably his best level. That wintering effect is just kind of gross in all honesty. And plus the artwork is great. It's actually super Android 13. So for the sake of it, screw it. I don't need this hat anymore. We ain't got no trucker hat. Arguably the grossest part about Android 13's level 3 effect though, is that it chains with his level 2 ability. So if you've got an ally that you control, a 14 or 15, you can banish them, level up, and then you still get to apply the when entering effect on top of your other stuff like Visiting the Past or Red Restriction, anything like that. So it's just really, really easy to put a ton of pressure on your opponent very quickly, especially around the mid-game. You have to excuse me about that, sorry, I just ate dinner. But it's a really, really pressure-heavy MP level, and I can see a lot of work going in this. If only Android 13 could play Saiyan. Imagine if he could play out with all the stage draining effects. Just go ahead and enter, force your opponent to skip, drain your opponent's stages, use the stage draining blocks, go ahead and throw in cards like Gut Kick and Sword Skill, and your opponent's just skipping around all over the place. Like, Android 13 is just playing a game of hopscotch. So that's where my trucker hat went. Android 13 ends his stack on a very respectable level 4, combining a very solid continuous effect, which changes from the winner in combat effects of level 2 and level 3, and giving a very respectable physical attack to really kind of round things out as a whole. His continuous effect adds to all of your non-style attack cards hit. Your opponent skips their next action this combat. So it's a very, very disruptive kind of stack, especially if you utilize it on a lot of non-styled cards. So you have to be really careful with it, especially if your opponent's exhibiting a lot of non-styled hate, which has been seen a lot here with cards like Android Defensive Blast, Saiyan Ki Burst, Cells Level 2. It's really, really easy to kind of forget that. But when you've got the additional forcing your opponent to skip all the time, it's just continuously ridiculous, especially if you're able to chain together a bunch of attacks that your opponent's not really able to stop. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply for his physical attack because it only applies to attack cards, but nonetheless, he's got a very respectable physical attack. Its base damage is 5 stages, which is pretty solid. Heroic Dashing Punch goes for that same amount, and that's just a fantastic card. But the immediate effect of his attack is it gains 1 extra stage of damage for every card with Android in your discard pile. So this is a really, really nice late game pressure holder. When you've got a lot of your Android attack cards in the discard pile, or if you've been leveling and you lost your Android attack drills or whatever, if your allies are gone, it's really easy to see us crank upwards of 10, 12, 15 stages of damage. It's a relatively effective physical attack. I feel like the base stage damage was a little bit low for his level 4, especially considering how amazing level 3's damage is. And I also would like to have seen an AT on here somewhere. None of the levels on his stack have an AT, which really kind of sucks, because you're reliant on all of your other drills and outside effects in order to actually make it a formidable attack. That said, it's also easier for the attack to actually go through because your opponents can be like, yeah, I'll take 4 stages, yeah, I'll take 5 stages, whatever. It's not going to be that bad by proxy. So I feel like his level 4 is slightly weaker than his level 3, even if the continuous effect is super, super effective. It relies on you to hit with that effect though, whereas level 3 just forces your opponent to skip their first action outright. Though I can see level 4 having some absolutely disgusting combos, especially if your opponent's unprepared for some of your non-styled attacks. They're just, you find a hold they've got in their hand, maybe they've only got 1 energy block or no physical blocks or whatever, maybe they've got an event like time and you can sphere it. So you can just chain those together, deal a bunch of damage, and you could find a way out with cards like Blinding Energy Move or Black Power Up, or as we'll get to next, Android 13's Impenetrable Defense. So there's a lot of ways you can just troll the mess out of your opponent, end out of combat, force them to lose a bunch of cards in their hand, and still deal a very considerable amount of damage. I'm still going to say level 3 is the better level, and it's where you're going to really want to stay at. But level 4 rounds out the stack relatively nicely as a whole. It's very balanced. I can see this one going over well with super, super heavy stage modifying drills and attack cards. Blue Protective would be absolutely amazing with this, pulling out Biting Drill, Lifting Drill, in addition to Android Attack Drill. If you've got the 14 ally out, you can deal even more damage there. So this one could crank for a huge, huge amount of damage. And it works out really nicely. It can be a lot more combo oriented, this one, if you want to use it to end out a combat, which we are also going to get to in Android 13's named cards. So first on the line for Android 13's named cards is Android 13's Impenetrable Defense, a simple physical attack block. If only it were really so simple. It's an outrageously powerful physical block. Of course, stops physical attack outright, but the first immediate effect of it is your opponent's MP loses 5 stages outright. Between this and between Android 13's level 3 ability, you're losing 9 stages there,
This is definitely a block on par with the Saiyan stage draining blocks. Once again, if only he could play Saiyan, it'd be filthy. But anyway, the 5-stage drain is fantastic. Can really help facilitate some early to mid game stage locks. In late game, it'll help apply a lot of pressure, especially if you're just going with modifiers on modifiers on modifiers. You guys know the deal. Its secondary immediate effect is your next successful attack gains hit end combat on the next action this turn. And that's just your next successful attack. It's not even your next attack, it's not your next style attack, it's your next one that is immediately successful. On top of that, the damage can't be prevented from it either. So you can deal massive amounts of damage with, just in attack your opponent is not ready to face. It's going to force your opponent to have to play some of their more defensive cards a little bit more carefully in some combats, especially if they know you're harboring big time attacks. It's a really effective block, even just based on the merits of its immediate effects. But it's also got a sick parenthetical effect that says if this card is discarded or destroyed from the life deck, you may banish it to raise your anger 2 levels. So that's where the tie-in again to Piccolo's Way of Clothing comes in. But in this way, it's probably more comparable to Dr. Wheelo's Revival in that if it gets destroyed from your life deck, oh fine, I'll banish it, I'll raise my anger 2 levels. You can level while you're taking damage. That's kind of ridiculous. Some of the other cards that you're really going to see utilized with Android 13, including his allies, allow you to proc this effect, so it's very effective. It's a very highly tuned physical block, and I can see it taking the place of a bunch of anger gaining blocks in other decks. I could see it almost take the place of Black Knee Catch, for example, or maybe, doubtful, but maybe Red Blocking Hand or something like that. Another red block that raises your anger 1 or 2 or whatever it may be. But it's a really powerful physical block, very effective. It's one that you would definitely want to see 3 of if you're running Android 13. And one that if 13 takes off is arguably going to be worth a lot of money. So if you pull any of those foil, be sure to let me know. And his other named card is Android 13's SS Deadly Bomber, which to me is a really mixed bag of a card. The effects that it's got are great. It's everything I was hoping for out of those. But the damage is just and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who thought that when I saw it. So Android 13's SS Deadly Bomber is an energy attack costing 1 stage, and the immediate effect allows you to search your discard pile for a non-named card with Android in the title and place it in your hand. So it's essentially Android 18's toss from the discard pile instead of the life deck, which is great. Android 18's toss is very effective at prolonging combat, getting extra attacks out there, putting extra pressure on your opponent. And this one can very much do the same. While it may not have the flexibility of 18's toss, it gets them back from the discard, which is something that you're definitely going to want to continue the pressure. Plus, its hit effect says damage from your attacks cannot be prevented this combat, which as we know is already outrageously effective, as evidenced by Turles, as evidenced by Aldeaker Grave, Red Static Shot. There's a ton of effects that just shut this off. They're really powerful, and this is another one of those cards that does it. Now for the downside in my book, the damage is 4 stages. Just 4 plain old stages, no modifiers to it, no life cards, nothing. And this is where I got really underwhelmed. I was hoping for, like Red Tandem Blast caliber damage, 1 for 4 life, or 1 for 5 life. Maybe an AT modifier, like AT plus 4 stages. Hey, I'd be fine with that. AT life cards, like Broly's Face Crusher. I'd be okay with that. The stage damage, it's just, I can't really put it any other way. To really push damage through with it, you need the modifiers, you really need stuff to work with, but I digress. You're not really using this card for the damage that it's doing, you're using it for the card proccing effect and maybe for the unpreventable damage. So it's a very combo heavy card, which seems to be a little bit of a theme with Android 13 in a lot of ways, which of course we're going to see with his 2 allies, Android 14 and Android 15. But if you're a big combo guy, I can see Android 13 having a lot of fun. Orange Adept would be very useful with him, especially to crank up the damage on a bunch of his other attacks. Black Devious could be a lot of fun. Once again, pushing through extra damage. You get a lot of buffs on the Android style cards. You get some great cards that have Android in the title as well, like Black Backstrike. There's a lot that you can work with that's gonna be just super, super useful for Android 13 here. I certainly can't complain. And he may end up being, honestly, one of my main choices here. It's ultimately going to be, kind of determined by how he plays out. And one thing I will admit that I don't really like is how he's got this kind of nail dichotomy, as I like to call it. His level 1 and his level 2 are a little bit more focused on the Android cards, pulling out allies, utilizing those allies in order to get up to the higher levels. But once he gets the spiky red hair on level 3, he kind of throws all that out and he just puts a bunch of passing pressure on your opponent. And it forces you to change up your game plan a little bit, depending on how you wanted to approach the deck. So sure, you could level really, really fast. You can utilize some of those effects, but trying to fit everything in, fitting in the allies, fitting in the anger, fitting in the banishing, fitting in the Android cards, it's going to be a really, really tight fit in the deck, especially with how many great styled cards that there are, along with the newly revealed freestyle cards. It's going to make it a really, really tight fit to make Android 13 do everything that you want, but it's certainly possible, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. If you guys have any ideas, be sure to let us know down in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about Android 13. So there's still 3 cards left to take a look at. Android 13's allies, Android 14, 15, and Unleashed. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the allies first. Android 14 has the really cool effect of when you enter combat, or not when you enter combat, sorry about that. When he enters play during combat, you can choose a card from your life deck that has Android in the title and destroy it. So that procs, Android 13's impenetrable defense, gives you an effect with SS Deadly Bomber. It's really nice for the combo stuff. That's really useful. If you do, you get to destroy a non-styled setup, which is a little bit weird, a little odd, but you can proc off Visiting the Past, Yamcha's Expert Assistance, Roshi's Slumber. There's a lot that you can really use and just kind of pick it off there. Very, very effective. And his constant effect, which I have mentioned about modifiers earlier, is that for every Android ally you control and play, if your MP has Android in the title, your attacks do +1 stage of damage for each of those allies. So it's a very solid damage buffer, really nice. And there's a ton of MPs who can utilize it. I could see 20 utilizing it. I could see 17 using it very, very well. Of course, Android 13 is going to want to use it. There's a lot of ways that he can buff up in some of these styles and just do massive amounts of damage. So it's nice to have an ally that can do that, as well as one that can help him jump up to level 3 if he really, really needs to. And the other one is Android 15, which he's got a similar but a very, very different effect. You can, at the end of the planning step, you can search your life deck for a card with Android in the title again and destroy it. So you're going to get the same effect as 14. But this time, if you do, you get to either banish a drill or banish an attached card, which seems a little bit odd. The effect of, Red Energy Blast or Blue Betrayal or Stare Down, whatever, that's really nice for getting rid of drills. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Android 20 decks. And any deck that's running Black Smooth in this drill, since that got limited to 1 per deck, it's a really, really easy takeout right there. But the attached card is what really gets me. You would think, I can use it to get rid of Wallbreaker, or I can get rid of Sane Rescue or whatever. But the real challenge here is that you're going to want to utilize it carefully to get rid of those attached cards because of the effectiveness of the ultra rare that we're going to take a look at, Unleashed. So Unleashed is an event, banish after use, of course, and it's just got a bunch of wild effects. Immediately, you get to search your life deck for a card that can attach to your MP and attach it. So that's cool. You can get out, good stuff like Sane Rescue, Android 19's Energy Absorption, this and that, whatever. The effect after that is arguably one of the most powerful effects in the whole set, in that you can advance your MP any number of X levels equal to the number of attached cards that you have attached to your MP. So if you've got 3 attached cards, you can jump from 1 to 4 right away. which is absolutely ridiculous when you consider some of the combos they can have. Cell catapulting up to level 3 and level 4 is just stupid powerful. And Trunks' new level 1 from Vengeance is going to be probably the biggest talking point for this, because you can use Unleashed, jump from level 1 to level 4 to get the massive damage buff, and still keep all of your drills because of the power of his level 1 Vengeance. So it's really useful just for that. But not only that, if your opponent cannot win by MPPV, which doesn't always happen, but if they can't, you can destroy any number of those attached cards that you've got and lower your opponent's MP number of levels equal to the cards you destroyed. So it's immediate level for you, it's immediate D level for them. It's just strong, man. It's really, really useful. I can see some decks putting this to use, but you have to be very, very selective about styles you use it in, because not all styles have attached cards. Red is going to be a huge benefit for it because they've got cards like Stomach Dive and Inferno and Club and all of these different cards that you can attach. Saiyan is going to be super valuable for it because of their plethora of attached cards. There's a lot that this card can do, but it's going to be very, very selective in its level of play. Only certain MPs are going to use it well. Only certain decks are going to use it well. It's not for every deck, but it's very, very powerful for the decks that it's in. Overall, it's just really, really nice. The stack is solid. The name cards are good. The allies are really effective. It all comes together really nicely in a very, very effective package for Android 13. I wish the damage were a little higher, and I wish the levels were a little bit more consistent. But what are you gonna do at this point? You know, you've got a lot of effectiveness here. I feel like we have a true Android MP, someone who's gonna utilize the cards to the best of their ability. It may end up being one of my main MPs. I know I've been very excited about 13 here, and he's not perfect, but there's a lot of ways you can make him work, make him very, very effective, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with, as well as us here at Team Badman. So that's going to do it for our quick look of the Android 13 MP stack. If you've been one who's been taking a look at all of the Android cards that there are and wondering, what can I do with these cards? Then you may be in the right boat. Android 13 can utilize those cards very effectively, recycle back a bunch of the Android cards, and there's some great offensive cards in there as well, so it's very, very easy to keep a lot of pressure on your opponent. He's got some really, really good constant win entering effects. His attacks are very solid. His name cards, while not perfect, are really, really nice together, and they can combo very, very effectively. All in all, it comes together as a really, really good package. It's someone that I'm very, very excited about. I feel like they could have done a little bit more work here and there, but I'm not going to complain. He's a good stack. He may not be top tier, right away, or maybe even at all, but he's going to be a fun stack to play, and seeing how people try to utilize the Android cards and try to work into an Android archetype is something I'm going to be very, very excited to see, which you may end up seeing in a future video here. I am taking a look at the viability of an Android archetype, and I feel like after Android 13 comes out, it could be a very, very real possibility. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this video, be sure to click the like button down below. If not, click the dislike button down below and let me know why you didn't like it in the comment section so I can improve it for next week's final quick looks for Vengeance and for any other future videos that we do. Also, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button down below so you guys can follow this series, all of our other series. There's a lot of videos that are coming up here really, really soon. Lots of stuff is going on. So you guys will be sure to keep an eye out for that. And lastly, be sure to check all of our social media links down below. You guys can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Libsyn, which for those of you guys who don't know, Libsyn is a podcast hosting website. So we will be doing a podcast here in the very, very near future. A lot of the plans are in the works, just trying to find the time. But you guys will have that to check out. We will let you know when the podcast comes out and what you guys are going to be able to check out about it. So be sure to hit up all those social media links, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. So that's going to do it for this Quick Looks. I'm Eric with Team Badman signing out. So thank you guys for watching. And like always, stay bad. We'll see you guys next week for the cooler MP reveal and all of our final reveals for the Vengeance set. Catch you later. I found my trucker hat.